Hi, good morning. My name is Neal Carter, a state representative for District 15. I'm one of two. You have two state representatives for each district, so you vote for two. So I'm one of the two state representatives. I also live in Santan Valley. Incidentally, I'm the first state representative from Santan Valley. And I've been living here. I purchased my house in Santan Heights in 2010, and now I live on a 2-acre parcel kind of behind the Walmart. So recently, a number of people have been asking me about incorporation. I would hasten to add for the record that I currently live outside of the incorporation boundaries, so I am not eligible to vote on the question, and I am officially agnostic on the question. I think there are pros and cons to any question, of course. One of the things that our community lacks is a fire district. Now we have fire coverage that's provided by Rural Metro as a subscription service, and that is optional to purchase. The cost of that would be a lot lower if everybody purchased it, and so a fire district lowers, it spreads, kind of like a risk insurance policy. It spreads the cost over a broader base and has a lower cost then for each individual member. So if we had a city or a town or a fire district, we'd be able to spread that cost over the entire city or town. Some people see that as an advantage because it would lower the cost for them if they're paying for it. Some people see that as a disadvantage because they may not be paying for it. So like I say, there's always two points of view to any question, of course. Currently, we are not incorporated, so our zoning decisions are made at the county level. There's a county planning and zoning commission. There are volunteers who work for it, which is wonderful. God bless them, because it's hard work and it's not remunerated. But those decisions are made at the county level from people from all over the county, from Oracle and Casa Grande and here and everywhere. So the decisions are at a higher level. An incorporated city or town would make its own zoning decisions. So there are some reasons why you might think it's advantageous. The primary reason I hear from people who are opposed to it is that they're concerned about paying increased taxes. This is a interesting, more complicated discussion, really. A city or town has taxing authority, so it is a possibility that there will be a tax enacted by the elected representatives of the city or the town. They could enact, in theory, a sales tax, which would be tacked on to the state sales tax. The state sales tax, incidentally, is 5.5%. And if you go to our local Walmart here on Gary and Hunt, which I go to regularly, just down the street from me, the tax rate is 6.7. So it's 5.5 to the state and 1.2 to the county. So a city or town could enact its own sales tax, and you'd pay an additional tax at the register. The town of Queen Creek, for example, has a sales tax, and that's why when you go to their Walmart up on Rittenhouse, I believe it's almost 9%. It's more than 8%. So it's Queen Creek's choice to do that. They did do that, and the taxes are higher in the Queen Creek Walmart. So it's a possibility. It's a real possibility. Taxes could go up. It's not necessarily that they have to. Like I say, the city or town council would have to vote on that, but that's a possibility. The second possibility is property tax. Now, the state doesn't charge a property tax. Believe it or not, I'm proud to say that I voted to eliminate the state portion of the property tax 3 years ago. So the property tax that you pay now goes exclusively to the county and mostly to schools, but to county schools and local things, okay? In other words, libraries, sheriff, schools are funded by the property tax. Cities and towns have the right to enact property taxes as well. It's my understanding that most of them do not, but it's a possibility. Again, not a foregone, but a possibility. So, like I say, I'm agnostic on the question. There are some serious advantages to it. You might receive better fire coverage, certainly more uniform fire coverage. You have more local control for zoning. You can direct money to road projects and so on, as local priorities dictate, which all of which I'm counting as a kind of a pro. The major con is the risk of increased taxes to fund certain municipal services. I would be remiss, however, if I didn't point out something important. When you create a city or a town, the state law only requires two things. So, what does it require? It requires that the city or town provide police coverage, and it requires a town clerk. And those are the only two things. It doesn't actually require fire coverage. So the city or town could incorporate and do nothing on that, and we'd still have Rural Metro as a subscription service. It doesn't require a town hall. It doesn't require a park. It doesn't require anything else. It just requires police and a town clerk. Now, the police are currently provided by the Pinal County Sheriff, as most of us know, and that's taken out of our taxes to the county, which comes from the 1.2% sales, right? That's enacted at the Walmart. I said it was 6.7 above the 5.5. So some of that comes from the county sales tax, and some of that comes from our property taxes to the county. So that's how we pay for that now. As a city or town, you would have to provide the coverage. It would be very unlikely that the city or town would have its own police department on day one. It may, in the future down the road, develop that, but it would probably be the case that the city or town would contract with Pinal County Sheriff. So you would still have sheriff's officers, the sheriff's level of training, that kind of a service, but the city or town would be paying for that sheriff service, which we are receiving now from the county through county taxes. So that's important to know. But obviously the county has a number of expenses. It pays for sheriff, it pays for the courthouse as a jail, it pays for a number of things. Notably, it pays for roads. County roads are all county provided, county paved, county maintained. Hunt Highway is a county road. I actually put in a bill a couple of years ago to designate Hunt Highway as a state highway in the hopes that the state would pick up the tab for it. But what I found was that before that was possible, we'd have to raise the standards to state standards, in which case it wouldn't make any financial sense. But if the city became, or Santan Valley became a city or town, is incorporated, you would still be paying county taxes. Then the county taxes would still be going to county roads outside the area, the sheriff, the county jail, and so on. Now, I would hasten to add that county taxes, property taxes, are a strange beast. They are an ad valorem tax, which means that you're taxed on the value of your property. And because, of course, properties usually are going up, and they might not be right now, but when property values go up, then your tax goes up, even if the rate does not. The Board of Supervisors is responsible for setting the rate. The Board of Supervisors in the last 5 years has been lowering the rate every single year. So they've actually been lowering the property tax rate, but because the values go up, you might see your bill go up a little bit every year. My bill typically goes up about 100 or something every year. So yes, the county would, in a sense, have a windfall because it would not be paying for the police service in Santan Valley, which it currently has to foot the bill for. That's true. But at the same time, the county would have more money to pave county roads and also to lower the taxes more, right? So that's sort of where you're at. There's no way around keeping your officials accountable. That's so paramount. Whether it's incorporated or not incorporated, they need to hear from you, and you need to tell them taxes should go down because now we have a city paying for this, frankly. Anyway, so I want to mention one other thing that's very important. Our state became a state in 1912. And in 1912, cities and towns had a lot of power. The cities and towns were mining centers like Prescott and Globe and so on, and they were used to running their own affairs. And I think there was probably some shenanigans with mining companies too. The point is that they were very jealous of keeping their power when we became a state. And so this state, Arizona particularly, if you're from another state, you might like to know that Arizona particularly has a very, shall you say, strong city and town framework. Now, it used to be the case that the cities and the towns were able to enact all kinds of taxes on their own, meaning they could enact an income tax just in that city and other kinds of things. And this was not seen as advantageous statewide, particularly as the state became more modern. In today's era, you drive across city boundaries all the time. It's a headache for somebody like a Walmart who has a branch in every city to have to figure out, oh, we have to pay this 5 cents here, but 2 cents there. And it became a huge problem. So basically, years ago, and I think it was 1980, but it was the 70s or 80s, the state came up with this kind of grandiose compromise. And the compromise was that the cities would give up some of their taxation authority to the state. The primary thing was that cities were authorized to have their own departments of revenue, and to actually, you would be submitting a tax form to the city instead of to the state. And nobody wanted to submit sales tax forms to every little city. So they just wanted to submit one to the state and break it out by city. And so the cities agreed, we're going to give up the right to have our own tax authority that is collecting taxes itself, requiring its own forms and all of that. And in exchange for that, in exchange for letting the state take over some of these things, the state agreed that it would pay to the cities a share of the revenue that it collected. It's called state shared revenue. You can look that up. Now, the state shared revenue, the agreement, was that the state would pay 15% of all the income tax and all the sales tax off the top that the state receives to the cities. It pays the cities proportionate to their populations, of course, but that is the revenue that they receive. Now, several years ago, I believe it was 4 years ago, the state legislature enacted a flat tax. A flat tax means that we have a 2.5% sales tax. Incidentally, I'm proud to say that your state legislature has the lowest flat tax in the nation. There are states with no income tax, and obviously that's lower. It's a 0% tax if there's no tax. But of the states that have an income tax, we have the lowest, and it's a flat tax at 2.5%. That's what you pay. And at that time, the cities and towns came to the legislature and they said, it's not fair to enact a flat tax, in short, to lower taxes, because we receive 15% of them. So then you're effectively not only cutting your own budget, state, but you're cutting ours too. And so there was a compromise that was reached whereby we enacted the flat tax and increased the state shared revenue from 15% to 18% to indemnify the cities from the tax cut that the state legislature was imposing on itself in its own budget, on the state's budget. So the state shared revenue is currently 18%. Every time you pay at Walmart your 5.5% sales tax, 18% of that 5.5% goes to cities and towns, proportionate to population, as well as your income tax. So what does that mean for Santan Valley if it incorporates? It would be a city or town benefiting from 18% a revenue stream from the state called state shared revenue. So that's important, because what you have here is, on the one hand, you have to pay for your own sheriff services for police, which you would think is a big cost. It's going to cost a lot of money, and that's a bad thing because they'll have to raise taxes to pay for that. On the other hand, though, you're going to receive your share of the state shared revenue. So then the question becomes, what will each thing cost? What will you receive? What will you have to pay? And quite frankly, I'm not qualified to speak on that. Like I said, I work at the state level. I can tell you all about the state budget. Boy, I can tell you, I could stay here for days. I'm talking about state budget. I don't live inside the town limits. I'm agnostic on this topic, but I believe that Santan Valley, if it incorporated at current population levels, would probably receive about 35 million. But I could be wrong on that. I'm often wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But so that's why it's a complicated question. You have some services you have to supply, some costs, but you have some money that would be coming in. You have potential, but not requirement for fire coverage. You have local zoning decision that you might be able to make or not. There's a risk that your new city council would enact new taxes. So that's where we're at. I believe the council votes for the tax increase. Now, keep in mind that the council can also vote to decrease and eliminate taxes, and you can elect a new council at every election, and you can recall people, which is too infrequent. I really believe that, and I'm a politician, I guess, because I'm elected in office now, but I'm also a citizen. And I think that people should keep a short leash on us. Absolutely, they should. You should be watching what we're doing, knowing what's going on, keeping people accountable, challenging them in elections. Term limits are excellent. We need term limits. My term limit, I'm eligible for 1 more 2-year term, and then I'm done. And I'm really done, So that's the way I see it. But yes, taxes could go up. City council could vote for it. You could then replace them and repeal them. But it is a real possibility. So